Imagine standing on a muddy battlefield in the middle of the 14th century. The air is thick with the smell of sweat and smoke, arrows whistle past your ears, and the thunder of horses' hooves shakes the ground beneath your feet. You might expect every soldier here to be clad in shining plate armor, swinging massive swords, and carrying enough supplies to last an entire month. But the truth is very different. Today, we're going to uncover exactly what a medieval soldier carried into battle during the 100 Years' War, and which parts are pure myth. By the end of this video, you'll see how the gear soldiers carried affected not only their survival, but also battlefield mobility and tactics. Prepare to rethink everything you thought you knew about medieval warfare. The 100 Years' War. The 100 Years' War raged from 1337 to 1453, stretching across the kingdoms of France and England. Millions of soldiers fought in brutal campaigns across fields, forests, and towns. Movies often show knights in full plate armor, swinging enormous swords with ease. But the reality was far more practical. Most soldiers carried only what they truly needed. What was necessary for survival, combat efficiency, and mobility. Heavy swords and opulent armor were the exception, not the rule. Today, we'll break down the weapons, armor, rations, and essential tools that real soldiers relied on, and we'll expose the myths that Hollywood loves to promote. Let's begin with weapons. When you picture a medieval soldier, the first thing that comes to mind is probably a massive two-handed sword. The truth? Most soldiers did not carry one of these into battle. Large swords were expensive, specialized, and usually reserved for knights or wealthy men-at-arms. Instead, infantry soldiers relied on practical weapons. Spears were common, lightweight, easy to wield in formation, and capable of both thrusting and throwing. Polearms, such as halberds, allowed soldiers to attack armored opponents from a safer distance. Archers carried bows and quivers filled with hundreds of arrows, because ranged attacks could decisively shape a battle. Shields were equally important. Far from decorative, these were practical defensive tools designed to protect soldiers in close combat and formation tactics. Wooden shields, often reinforced with iron, were standard for infantry, while heavier kite-shaped or heater shields were reserved for knights. They blocked arrows, deflected blows, and could even push enemies during combat. Films often show soldiers swinging enormous swords as their primary weapon. In reality, lighter, versatile weapons were the norm. Heavy swords were status symbols, not everyday battlefield essentials. Next up, armor. Hollywood would have you believe that every soldier marched into battle weighed down by hundreds of pounds of gleaming steel. In truth, full plate armor was rare. It was expensive, difficult to make, and mostly worn by wealthy knights. Most infantrymen wore simpler mail shirts or padded gambesons. Mail shirts, made from interlinked metal rings, offered excellent protection against slashes, but were heavy and could still be punctured by arrows. Gambesons, thick, quilted jackets, absorbed impact and were worn underneath mail or alone. Helmets ranged from simple iron caps for common soldiers to more elaborate designs for knights, but practicality was always prioritized. Full plate armor was not standard. Most soldiers needed to move, march long distances, and fight efficiently. Mobility was crucial. The image of soldiers weighed down by layers of steel is mostly Hollywood exaggeration. Weapons and armor tell only part of the story. Soldiers also needed food and water. Forget visions of roast meats and wine. The reality was far simpler. Most soldiers carried hardtack, dry, long-lasting biscuits, along with salted meat, cheese, and occasionally dried fruits. Water was stored in small, leather flasks, and ale was often consumed because it was safer than untreated water. Carrying heavy food supplies was impractical. Soldiers relied on light, portable rations, and often supplemented them by foraging during campaigns. Every ounce mattered because soldiers had to march long distances and remain combat-ready. Soldiers did not travel with luxurious feasts or extravagant provisions. Survival depended on lightweight, practical rations. Beyond weapons, armor, and food, soldiers carried essential tools. Knives were multi-purpose. They could be used for preparing food, repairing gear, or in emergency combat. Flint and steel were essential for starting fires. Small pouches stored coins or personal items, and sewing kits helped repair clothing and leather gear. Cavalry soldiers carried additional equipment, such as saddles, bridles, and reins, gear vital for maintaining mobility and control over horses. Every item had a practical purpose. Soldiers did not lug around treasure, luxury items, or anything unnecessary. Every item served a function, from survival to combat readiness. Medieval soldiers were highly practical, not burdened with useless possessions. So, how did all this gear influence battlefield tactics? Weight and mobility were critical. Heavily armored knights were powerful but slow. They could dominate in direct combat but were vulnerable to coordinated infantry formations. Lighter soldiers could maneuver quickly, flank enemies, or retreat strategically when needed. Rations and tools also dictated how campaigns were planned. Armies had to manage resupply carefully, and soldiers traveling light had a much higher chance of surviving long marches and harsh conditions. In essence, what a soldier carried shaped not only individual survival, but the strategies employed on the battlefield. Let's quickly recap some of the biggest myths versus the real story. Myth: every soldier carried a huge sword. Reality: most soldiers carried spears, short swords, or pole arms. Myth: full plate armor was standard. Reality: only wealthy knights wore full armor. Most soldiers wore mail or padded jackets. Myth: soldiers traveled with abundant food and luxury. Reality: rations were minimal and practical. Hardtack, salted meat, and ale. Myth: soldiers carried treasure or personal luxury items. Reality: every item served a practical purpose. By understanding what soldiers truly carried, we can better appreciate the challenges they faced and how carefully they prepared for survival and combat. So, the next time you watch a movie with knights struggling under impossibly heavy armor, swinging enormous swords, remember this: medieval soldiers were far more practical than Hollywood portrays. They carried only what they needed to survive, fight, and move efficiently across the battlefield. Weapons, armor, rations, and tools were carefully chosen, not for show, but for real-life survival and effectiveness. Knowing this gives us a deeper appreciation for the ingenuity and resilience of medieval soldiers. If you found this look into the real lives of medieval soldiers fascinating, make sure to subscribe for more history myths busted and behind-the-scenes truths about the past.